for 1A, did we decide that these are parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Did we count the slope of these two lines?
No, that's perpendicular.
This one, they wouldn't be perpendicular, but if you counted the slopes, this one has a slope of 1, 2, 3, and this one has a slope of neither. It looks like these are going to be parallel because it looks like they're not going to intersect. But we can't just base it off how it looks. We also need to check the slope and see if they have the same slope. Because if it looks like they're not going to intersect and they have the same slope, then they're parallel. But if it looks like they're not going to intersect but they don't have the same slope, that means somewhere
They touch.
out here they're going to touch.
It's not going to be a right.
No, it's not going to be a right angle. They're just going to intersect. What about? Oh, I forgot. This is on separation. What did we find for B? Did we check the slopes? What were the slopes? So these were actually perpendicular. They look like a T and their slopes are negative reciprocals. Mine is out of order for you guys, so I need to find this one. So mine says 3, but I renamed yours to 2. For this one, you needed to find the slope of this line. If you counted it, you needed to be careful because these are counting by Q's. Or you could have just found the slope using these 2 points that they gave you. And then they wanted you to find the perpendicular slope of this line. The slope of this line, I'm going to go ahead and do that really quickly. 1 minus 5 over 5 minus negative 5. So negative 4 tenths or negative 2 fifths. That is the slope of this line. For what? Yes. Give me a second. What would the perpendicular slope of this be? Positive 5 over 2. So you needed to find the original slope and then take that and flip it. So B is not something we've talked about, but it's taking what we did with the writing when you're given slope and a point and combining it with parallel and perpendicular lines. So I'll show you this, but this is not something that's going to be like on your test or anything like that. So if we needed to actually, let me rethink that because what I was going to do, we could do it a different way. Because we need to plot another point that's parallel to this line is line L, and it has to go through this point. We know the slope of this line is negative 2 fifths. So we would need to use this slope to find another point from this. So this is the point that it tells us what it is. Negative 4, negative 3. So if I use my slope and I remember that these are counting by 2's, if I go down 2 to the right 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, negative 5 would be a point. There's multiple answers for this. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Negative 7 would be a point. Four, 5. 11, -9 would be a point. You can go the other way. -9, -1 would be a point. -14, 1 would be a point. Then any of those. So you would have to know your slope and find another one. Any one of those would be the answer to B. But what I was going to say is, if you find the equation of this line that goes through this point, so you have your slope, you have your point, write the equation of that line, and then once you draw your line, you could see which points go through the grid lines exactly, or not the grid lines exactly, because they're kind of confused. For, was this the next one? Yes. This one you needed to see which of these were parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So you needed to solve the equations if necessary. B, these were already solved. Are these parallel, perpendicular, or neither?
That is.
Neither, neither, yep. C was parallel. But you needed to solve those, so 5y equals -3x plus 9, or y equals -3 over 5, x plus 9 fifths. And then the same thing for this one. They both have the same slope, which would then lead A to be perpendicular. And you could check that by solving this one. And then the very last question asks which of these, or they have to determine if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. One thinks it's parallel, the other thinks it's neither. Excuse me. But you needed to solve this one to see that. You have -2x plus 7. Are these two lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither?
Neither.
Neither, because they're exactly the same. So your explanation would be they're the same line, or they have to be neither. If you got the review from me last class, raise your hand so I don't pass it back out to you. You got it last class? Yes. You got it? Okay.
Oh, that one.
Okay, you can put your hands down. Go ahead and take those reviews out if I did take them last time.
Oh, it is. And it's not. What is it?
Thank you.
Alright, so we're going to go over certain questions just as we've done in the past. Find questions that we skip over that you still have questions about. What did I do? Oh, I just think that off. And like start, circle it. So there are 3 objectives. Really, it's 2 split into 1 and then another. The writing the equations is split into 2 objectives. Writing the equations strictly from a graph, and then writing the equations from everything else. Given an equation, slope and a point, given 2 points. And then the last one is parallel and perpendicular lines. Can you determine if it's parallel, perpendicular, or neither? So my graphs are a little bit stretched, but they are the same. So we're going to do number 2. So with number 2, because we are writing the slope-intercept form of the equation from this graph, we need to find the slope and find the y-intercept. Y-intercept is easy because that should be where it crosses. Where it crosses the y-axis. So that would be at -5.
And that was his own four.
That's not.
It's not. It's like, it starts to go towards -4, but it doesn't actually until later. And then to find our slope, we need another point that goes to the grid lines exactly. Someone tell me a point they see. A good
-1. That's -1, 3.
-1, 3. Okay. So what would the slope from those 2 points be? -8. So once we have our slope and our y-intercept, we can put those together in an equation. Y equals -8x minus 5. Yep. Number 3 is our next one. The slope is undefined, which means it's what type of equation?
X equals.
X equals. And what number does x equal? Do we need to do one more of these? Flip to the next page. We skip to 6. So this would start the second objective, the writing equations when given slope and y-intercept, slope and a point, 2 points. For number 6, if I'm given my slope and given my y-intercept, how would I write that equation?
Y equals 1/5.
y equals 1/5 x minus 3. Those should be easy questions. I don't know why I took that back. You could have been. Where is the way? It's alright. Right. Jumping to the next section, we're going to do number 9. Right. Now we are given a slope and point, and you need to use your point slope formula somewhere on your paper. Write that down so you have it. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. For number 9, if you need to label them so you know which one is which, x1, y1, and m. So we have y minus, our y1 here is 0, equals, our slope is negative 1/2. In parentheses, we have x. You can either go ahead and change this to plus 4, or you can put minus and negative 4, and then change it to plus. Either or. However, don't distribute before you change that. So either change it immediately or change it before you distribute, but change it. Bless you. Because this is minus 0, I can really make that disappear. And I can distribute at the same time. So this would be negative 1/2 x. Negative 1/2 times 4 gives us questions on that one? The next one we're going to do is number 12. And you guys don't have this, but I want you to write this in this empty spot right here. Through the point 0, 1/2 with a slope of 1/2. So, number 12. If the slope is undefined, what type of equation is that? It's an x equals. When you have something like this, you do not need to use your point slope formula. We know that this is going to be an x equals equation. In your point, what does x equal? 3. So that would be your equation. X equals 3. That is it. Now, if you get a problem like this that says the slope is undefined, you can't use point slope formula. If it says the slope is 0, you can, but you don't have to. So if this says slope is 0 and you did the point slope, you would end up with just y equals whatever the number is. But if you wanted to do that work, you're more than welcome to. For the one that we just wrote down, do we have to do any work to that one? No. It has a point and it has a slope, but this point that they gave you is your y-intercept. Don't make more work for yourself when they give you information. So this would be the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 1/2. The next one is going to be 13. Now we are given 2 points. What is the first thing we need to do? Find the slope. So this would be 2 minus 3 over 5 minus a negative 4. What would our slope be?
Negative 1/9.
Negative 1/9. And then we're going to use that slope and one of our points to find our equation. Which point do we want to use?
First one.
Okay. If you want to use 5-2, that's also fine. Don't use both. You don't want to create extra work. Just pick one. So if we're using the first one, this would be y minus 3 equals negative 1/9 times x plus 4 or x minus a negative 4. And then we can solve. We will need to distribute, so y minus 3 equals negative 1/9 x minus multiply the negative 1 and 4, leaves a 9. This would be negative 4/9. We would then need to add 3 to that. You can either put that in your calculator or change that to a fraction. What would that be as a fraction?
7 and a 9.
Yeah. So our equation would be y equals negative 1/9 x plus 23 over 9. Remember that sometimes you may get a fraction y-intercept, and that's okay. I would say if you're not sure, check it on Desmos. Put in the points or put in the equation, see if they would still go over those points. For 14, to find our slope, that would be negative 5 minus negative 4, or just plus 4, over 2 minus 4. What would our slope be? Which would give us a positive. Which point do we want to use to find our y-intercept? The first one? Okay. This would be y plus 4, or y minus a negative 4, equals 1/2 times x minus 4. Distribute. You have y plus 4 equals 1/2 x minus 2. And then subtract them. y equals 1/2 x minus 6. We're going to do 2 more on this page, number 16, and then you guys are going to write this one down in the blank space. You can do that now or wait. Through 0, 7 and negative 1/2 1. Starting with 16, our slope would be 0 minus negative 5 or plus 5 over 0 minus 4. So we'd have positive 5 over negative 4, or you can put the negative out front, or with the 5. Do we need to even put that one in? No. Because this one is our y-intercept.
Yeah, really, okay. That means the other one.
Say it again.
And that means the other one.
The other one. When you solve it, either way, you would end up with 0 as your y. Now let's do this one that we wrote down. Find our slope first. So we have 1 minus 7 over negative 1/2 minus 0. In our numerator, we have negative 6. In our denominator, we have negative 1/2. You could either put this part in your calculator or do it by hand. I would need to multiply this by the reciprocal, but do it for both parts. Our denominator cancels. Do we know our y-intercept? Yes, 7. They gave us that, so we don't need to solve for that. So y equals 12x plus 7. We're going to do almost all of these. For 18, because these are all in slope-intercept form, the easiest thing would probably be to just solve the equation I gave you. So subtract 5x on both sides. So we have negative 2y equals negative 5x plus 18. And divide everything by negative 2. So we get positive 5 over 2x -9. Which of these would be parallel to them?
C.
Now in 19, it's the opposite. Now you're given an equation in slope-intercept form, and the rest of the equations are in standard form. So you can do one of two things. Solve each one to see which one gives you a slope of, what would be perpendicular to -3?
-1/3.
Positive 1/3. You could solve each one and see which one gives you that. Or you have Desmos and we'll have access to that. So you can put each one in and see which one has a slope of 1/3. I'm going to do that really fast. So we need a positive slope of 1/3. Which one do we think that is? Line D. Or this part? If you were using the converting to solving method, what I would say is solve each one, or start to solve each one. If you solve A, you get a slope of -3x. If you solve B, you get a slope of -1/3. Notice how the format of them is kind of similar. You have 3x and then y, x and 3y, 3x and -y, and x and -3y. So because the x and 3y gave us -1/3, if we had that same format but switched the signs, so x and -3y would give us the positive 1/3. If you were solving it by hand. For number 20, we just need to state what the parallel slope would be and what the perpendicular slope would be. So what I'm going to do is do our symbols. So for A, parallel slope would be what? 4. Perpendicular would be -1/4. For B, parallel would be, be careful with that. Is that your slope? -2 would be -2. So they switched that on you guys. So be careful with those. Perpendicular would be with C. Can I find the parallel perpendicular slope right now? No. It's not in, well, this one wasn't really in slope-intercept form, but it's switched. But we need to get rid of this 2 before we answer that question. And now we can answer that question. What was the parallel? 3/2 and the perpendicular? -2. -2/3. We are not going to do 21 unless someone wants to do that later, but those are just, are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Questions. We're gonna do 22 and 23. So for 22, it says find the value of A that would make the first equation perpendicular to the second. So that means we first need to solve the second to divide everything by 2. And then after we solve the second, look at the slope and answer what slope would be perpendicular to this one. -2/3. And that would be what A equals. So it looks probably more complex than it really is, but it's not that difficult. 23 is the same thing. We have to solve this equation or convert it back to slope-intercept form first. Add 4x to the other side. Divide everything by 3. And then looking at the slopes, what slope would be perpendicular to this?
To -4.
Negative, not 4 or 3.
3.
And that would be what A equals. The next page of this is like more of the first 2 objectives. And the very last page is like a repeat of this, but written in different forms, like they're the exact same questions. On the very last page, I want you to ignore these. I think I may have wrote that on your thing, I'm not sure. Okay. So disregard those. Don't worry about those at all. Yes, those 15, 17, I don't know why it's numbered like that. Maybe that was supposed to be 16. Anyway, these 4. Before I let you guys practice some, were there any that we skipped over that we wanted to see? No one had any others that they wanted to see? So for the remainder of class, here are the things that you can be working on. The rest of the questions in the review, I would start there until you feel comfortable with each objective. If you have not done past Khan Academy or Delta Math, go on to those. If you would like more practice than that, check back in your notes, make sure you've gone over all of those. And if you haven't still want more practice, I can find you some. If you feel good after all of that, then you can stop and work on other things. But review Delta Math and Khan Academy and then other practice. After that, you can have your own time to work on other schoolwork, but do it in that order. Anyone have questions on what we're doing for the remainder of class? Aubrey's and Sophie. Is there any names? The parallel perpendicular lines is due today if you haven't done that. So if you've done them all, then I have some tests I need to get done, so if you have questions on review, Khan Academy, Delta Math, anything, just bring them up to me and I'll answer them. But you guys have this time to work.